Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Speed Tips by Bob and Chad. Um, we apologize for last week. I had some difficulties. For some reason, the microphone on my computer was not working, and I got to spend some quality time with the Dell people, and we ended up reinstalling some things, and now it seems to be working. So don't really know what all happened there, but anyway. So hi, Chad. How are you today?
Doing good, doing good. Yeah.
What's new and exciting at Weir's Machine?
Oh, just another week here. We're winding down the season, building parts for getting ready for the build season coming up, and working on a new catalog. And went to Deer Creek and did some factory support there a couple weeks ago, and getting ready for the Oktoberfest race weekend here locally this weekend, and just plugging away, working on some new products. And it's sad that the season's over.
Yeah, it kind of is. I look forward to a little bit of this off time just because then I can I've spent the last couple of weeks in the shop sorting bolts and just picking up little piles here and little piles there of things that kind of accumulate in this little bin and this little bin and this little bin, and just going through all that kind of stuff and doing a little cleaning and little house cleaning and kind of wiping a year's worth of welding dust off of the shelves and stuff like that. So like I was telling Brandon today, I said, we won't even need a light back here. The shelf is so freaking bright that you don't need lights. And so no, it's been good. So I've had a good time spending some time out in the shop, and we, like I said, we got Brandon and we've got two new guys that are going to be starting here pretty soon. So we're looking forward to that, and I'm pretty excited. We've got a lot of neat things going on, a lot of things to look forward to for next year, and so we're pretty pumped at BHE.
I brought a new tool,
Awesome.
one you helped with.
Oh yes, that A-frame checker.
Yeah, these are ready to rock and roll. So
That'll be
that
pretty slick, man.
yeah, that goes over the hex on the bolt on the car, and then one rod goes up and bumps the lower control arm, and then you measure to the ball joint ring off of this one. So you'll take a measurement when the lower control arm is new, and you'll document that, and then you go race, and if you run into something or crash, then you reference that measurement real fast with this tool, and it'll tell you if your right front lower is bent, kind of along the lines of the spindle checker that you can screw it on there real fast and get a real fast check, after contact on the speedway at the racetrack. And then it also has the center links drilled in it, so it's got the Chevelle, hard to see in here, but the Chevelle and the metric car center links are drilled in there, so you know if that thing is bent also real fast. And this thing spins either way, so you take it out if you're on the left front, switch it if you're on the right front. So just a pretty cool tool. Fred Ryland, my buddy from California, Old Fast Freddy, another trick tool from him. So those are.
Well, that's going to be a pretty slick tool, especially using it and building your notebook. When the car's all fresh and you got new A-frames on it, you're writing down those measurements, and then you have that quick measurement to change. What's the retail price on that going to be?
I think 75, 80. I guess I should have checked that. I don't know.
Okay,
I think $80.
cool.
I
Well, that's
failed.
pretty good. Well, like I said, it's a pretty nice tool. Looks like it's going to do a nice job, and so yeah, pretty exciting. Okay, CJ wants to tell us it was nice seeing us both at the Super Nationals. Well, we appreciate seeing you there too. We got that was, once again. I can't stress enough the fact that man, you get to see so many people at that event. I mean, it's just so cool. It does get a little tiring after a while because the days get a little long, but it's still, it's just exciting to get to see the people that you very seldom get to see. Dan's got a question on USRA B mod. If I lower the J bar on the pinion, will it cause the left front to come off the ground? Most definitely. The lower you put it on the pinion, the more it's going to lift the left front. What it's doing is sticking that right rear and holding right rear in the car. So you got a ton of side bite. And what happens is then when you get all that side bite in there, it lifts the left front. David, Chad, will a new tool check a +1 or just standard length A-frames?
Gonna have to make an alteration. Put another hole in there. Thanks, David. We'll get that dialed in the next revision. But yeah, it should have plenty of room to drill another hole there to move out. You could just measure at an angle up to that one too, but I think it'd be better to have it out a far inch so it's more in line with the ball joint. So I'll definitely make that change. It'll make the tool lighter and tricker too.
There you go. No doubt about that. Jason, a modified right rear when tightening the car up on a slick racetrack by pulling the tire in, going from a 3 to a 4-inch. Should we decrease the load number on the spring, such as taking rounds out of the right rear spring? I wouldn't change the spring whatsoever, because if you're trying to get more side bite by using that, moving that tire in, and going a full inch is quite a bit of movement. You might actually go to a 4-inch with a 1/2-inch spacer, because you moving that right rear tire, it doesn't take much to be a significant change. I've played a lot with 1/4-inch spacers and 3/4-inch spacers, and it's a pretty sensitive adjustment on those cars. So going from a 3 to a 4 is going to gain you a whole bunch of side bite. The problem, what happens is we almost get to a point where we tighten the car up too much, and to the point where now all of a sudden the right front can't stick with the right rear, and your racetrack slowed down a little bit. So that's going to make the problem a little better, but it's something to be cautious of. But in answer to your question, I wouldn't change the load on the spring. When it goes dry stick in a sport mod, would adjusting the panhard bar bracket on the chassis or the rear end be better, or even beneficial if adjusting the 2-link bars be better? Well, Joshua, putting more, lowering the panhard bar on the rear end is definitely going to get you more side bite if that's what you're looking for. That's going to give the car a little bit more side bite on a slick racetrack. Keep in mind, you also, when the racetrack does go dry, that you are slowing down a little bit. So you don't want to, I wouldn't go moving it 1/4 of an inch can make a difference. A 1/2 inch is a pretty normal change. I've seen guys go more, and that's a lot. So be a little careful there. Adjusting the 2 links, I don't know if I'd say it'd be better, but a lot of times we do both. I'll do the panhard bar to help the car get into the corner, and I'll adjust the 2 links to get the car off the corner better. Got any information on upper trailing arm location on an IMCA stock car rear end? Curious if there's a preferred height off the rear end or desired angle at ride height or in dynamic. What I can tell you, Chucky, is the fact that I would put them things as close to the rear end as I could, the upper mounts as close to the rear end as I could, because then that helps you get angle in those upper bars. An angle in those upper bars is kind of like a 4-link modified. I mean, all that stuff came from that 4-link GM car, the stuff that we're doing on the 4-link stuff now. Anyway, more angle is going to give you more traction up off the corner, and you don't have to raise the back of the car so high to try to get that traction. So I would recommend mounting them as close to the rear end as you could. Judson, How is Tom Berry on a different level than completely different than doing that sets him so far apart? I'll tell you what, man, Judson, if I had that answer, I would be one of the fortunate guys because whatever Tom's doing, I congratulate him, man. I tell you what, he is on a roll. That car is just unbelievably fast, and of course he's a heck of a driver. I mean, Tom's a pretty cagey dude. He spends a lot of time with some late model guys, and so he's very knowledgeable on the car and a very knowledgeable driver and very knowledgeable setup guy. Um, he helped us out with Taylor Cool at the Super National on her sport mod, just having us change one jet in one of the shocks. And it's something that I hadn't actually thought of. Bobby said that he had done it before on some other guys, but by Tom watching her driving style, he made a recommendation that definitely helped her car out. And it was something that I hadn't even thought about. Jason, I have a GRT square tube car, converting it to a Wasota B-Mart. What are your thoughts on using swing arms? Well, the swing arm suspension is very forgiving. Uh, I don't know the problem with the swing arm stuff. I don't think it's as good as the standard two-link stuff on a dry slick condition. If you had a heavy, fast racetrack, heavy, rough, fast racetrack, what swing arm would be the cat's ass. I mean, it'd be good. But when we get really smooth and slick, I still think your three-link suspension, two-link suspension is a little better. Kenny, when you say your recommended ride heights, do you not pay attention to your scale numbers anymore? IMCA stock car. We still set the ride heights and then we work with the ride heights and the scale numbers. Sometimes some of those cars can be a handful to set up, but if you keep working it diagonally all the time, like if you put a turn in the left front and you put a turn in the right rear and you take one out of the right front and take one out of the left rear, that gets you more left rear bite. But if you do a little at a time, you'll find that the ride heights actually maintain, because all you're doing is you're switching load from spring to spring, so you're still maintaining your heights or reasonably close. William, how to add drive with limited droop and side bite, running left rear clamp and right rear with a spring on top. Left rear is a 225 and right rear is a 200. Well, in the new thing that people are doing today is running a stiffer right rear spring and the softer left rear spring. The stiffer right rear spring seems to get the car more side bite. That softer left rear kind of helps the car get over and gets a little bit more attitude in it. And that's one thing that I would recommend. Other than that, moving static weight around definitely is something that's a good thing to think about too for on those type of situations. Larry, glad to see you at the Super Nationals. Got to hang out and visit a little bit. So hope everything's going good down there in Texas. I hope you didn't have any of that weather that drifted over from Florida to Texas. I don't think Texas got any of it. But Justin, is your tooling school in January geared towards BHE cars or overall sport mods, theories, and ideas? It's geared to overall sport mods. We deal with a lot of different shock customers, so we have quite a bit of knowledge about what some of the other sport mod guys are doing, and so it's a pretty much generic brand wise at school. We don't tailor it. We tell you a lot of stuff we might refer to as what we do with our sport mod, but that'll also relate to what you can do with yours. And so we try to keep that. Our schools aren't supposed to be just for BHE customers. They're supposed to be for all customers. Jeremy, multi-leaf Midwest modified on shackles. Does raising a leaf on shackles do anything, and what should be higher and how much? You got any leaf spring knowledge, Chad?
My last leaf spring car was in 1999. I don't remember anything about it. I didn't know we were still racing leaf springs.
Well, the thing with that is what I've actually always done is I've raised the shackle on the left rear, but that's because yeah, and then we're running like with the left rear spring is always an inch more arch than the right rear spring, so we can run it like a 2-inch block in the left rear with a 1-inch block in the back. I don't know if I would. I don't know. Having those leaves work together and the timing with that shackle, if you have a different length shackle, there's going to be one spring is going to have a little different timing aspect of it. And I'm not really sure how that completely works. I have done it, but I can't say that it was the right thing to do. We played more with lowering blocks. That seemed to be a lot more of an advantage from what I can remember of my leaf spring days. Judson, what's the best way to get drive out of the left rear IMCA A mod? Seems like A mod, the left rear instrument in the racetrack. What's your thoughts, Chad?
Well, if the left rear isn't in the racetrack, it probably needs left rear traction, so probably drive angle on the left rear. I don't know how much bite you have, probably left rear wedge. I assume that's what you mean.
Yeah. More angle in your upper bar is going to give you more traction off. Changing the bars. And a lot of times people worry about so much about traction off, but you got to remember we got to get through phase 1 and phase 2 really good to get traction off. And so a lot of times, changing up what we do on corner entry or in the middle of the corner can actually help forward drive off too. So make sure you're not just focusing on traction instantly up off the corner, because a lot of times if you pick up some speed in the middle of the corner, that's where the race is actually won, and you'll find that you have more traction because your momentum is about better. Brian, what are your thoughts on left rear shock mount to rear end versus on birdcage on a UMP modified? Well, there's pluses and minuses about that deal. You can put the shock on a clamp bracket, which we have done in the past, and definitely help the car traction up getting off the corner. The problem is your normal shock that you have on your left rear when you put it on the cage isn't necessarily going to be the shock that you're going to want to use there. As a generic term, we'll say like your left rear shock is like a 10-3, 10 compression, 3 rebound. Well, you actually, when you go on the housing, you almost need like an 8 compression with like a 5 rebound, because when you get off the throttle, the car is going to drop a little faster when it's when pinion angle goes out of it, it's going to drop that shock, and so you're going to have to have a little bit different valving to control it. There's speed, definitely traction off the corner. I believe there's a lot of speed there as long as you can make sure that it doesn't disrupt your corner entry. AJ, IMCA Sport Mod, going from a crate to an open motor, the car just wants to blow the tires off coming off the corner. Unless I really ease into it, what are some of the things that you would try to help this situation? This is not necessarily a smart comment, but I definitely talked very closely with my chassis or my engine builder. The camshaft and these guys, they've perfected this stuff to the point where now these open motors are really good coming off the corner. We'll use like Kobe Fett, his teammate, the 9 car, national champion, Matt Luft. Those guys have got those open motors working pretty good, and you notice that they aren't blowing the tires off. But if you listen carefully to their motors, it sounds like them things are just lugging coming up off the corner. So I think there's a lot to do with that. Chassis wise, more angle in that left rear bar is going to help you come up off the corner. But you actually, with the open motors, it seems like we've got to have a little bit more angle on the right rear bar to get the car to steer so that it doesn't take the chance of braking traction and easing into the throttle. So I mean, there's a lot of engine tuning that needs to go into that combination for it to be the best. Jeremy, I have it on a bearing on the right side.
Leaf spring.
Leaf spring.
And then he says he has the adjustable blocks for wheelbase. I'm bringing the leaf setup back with these low horsepower cars.
Well, I mean, a good old leaf spring car, when they're on, they're pretty good. You've got basically 2 lift arms in the car. I mean, it's not saying it's not something to think about. I can't dream of working with leaf springs, but as long as it works out, that's okay. Starting fresh with an old home-built metric car, chassis SS, how would you go about spring and a shock? What's a good starting point? Well, Michael, before I could, I'm assuming you're talking about a street stock. All right, no problem. Those cars, depending on what the car actually weighs, I mean, a good old place to start, with 1,000-pound left front or 1,000-pound right front and a 800-pound left front, 225-pound right rear, and like some of them guys run soft left rear springs. The other thing, if you run the soft left rear spring, you actually almost need to flip those springs around in the front, running a stiffer spring. The stiffer spring in the left front will give you more side bite getting into the corner. The stiffer spring in the right front seems to help traction off the corner. But that's just a general idea. Putting a Penn Ohio car in dynamic state. Pulling the right front down using a strap. Putting a swedge tube on the left rear as a shock eliminator, keeping it up. Car is on the right rear chain with it just sitting static. Seems like left front is pretty light. Is there a 4-wheel scale number we should be shooting for? Oh, I wouldn't have a clue in dynamic. I've never done that. When it kind of goes to that dynamic stuff, I just kind of work on the load stick in the right front and then preload in both rear springs Usually like with my left rear, usually running it with about 200 pounds of preload in that spring, depending on what weight spring. But yeah, Eric, I wouldn't have a clue what to tell you. The left front would be pretty light. I would imagine it would be.
I mean, you're trying to take the car and put it on scales and pull it down and get some sort of reference point. I mean, you're never in the shop gonna be able to put centrifugal force, G forces, and all that. The banking of the track. The data acquisition thing in the pull down rig is all cool, but unless you have the actual data from the racetrack that you're running on, you're really just grasping for straws and you don't even know what the numbers mean. But what you're doing there, pulling that car down on the scales, you can take them four numbers and write them down, and then you can do some things to the chassis, and you'll get different numbers by pulling that. If you pull it the same and you have sticks made the same length, and you can learn some stuff there, but you're really not going to learn a lot. You're going to find a bind, you're going to find different things, but really without data acquisition and a pull down rig and doing it the way you need to do it on track data, it's going to be tough to get anything worth using there.
Jeremy, it's like you talked about with his adjustable blocks. That's definitely sounds like you've definitely got a good handle on that leaf spring stuff with the low horsepower cars. Yeah, I don't know if horsepower has a lot to do with it, but definitely leaf spring car is a nice driving race car. Travis, are you guys running reverse stagger on an IMCA stock car to help in the dry slick? I have heard some guys doing that. I don't believe in that. Once again, reverse stagger, all that's going to do is try to help you off the corner, which means if you're running reverse stagger, you need more wedge or you need more left rear bite in the car. You'd be better off running stagger so that the car rolls. It's kind of like taking that coffee cup and rolling it around on your desk. And of course, you want to do that with it empty and roll it around and see kind of how it pivots around the pendulum of the coffee cup. Well, your race car is kind of the same way. We want it to, really on a dry slick racetrack, we want the car to go in and rotate the corner without breaking traction on either one of those tires. So running reverse stagger, I think they did that back in the 50s. I mean, that was something that people have tried in the past. It definitely will help the car off the corner.
One of my old advisors back in the day would call that a massive crutch for something else you have wrong.
And I would agree with one of your old advisors. No doubt about that. Hey, buddies. LOL. Chad, I've got the WM230 pinion climber. Does the spacer that comes with it go on the bolt first, then through the J-bar? I've been having problems actually bending pinion mounts. Not sure why. Was thinking about not running the spacer.
So the short spacer that's like 5/16 long goes on the head of the bolt, and then the J-bar goes on, then the climber gear goes onto the pinion mount. Maybe it's a deal where you're bottoming the bolt out. I would put it through the whole motion and make sure that the Panhard bar doesn't have any binds. You definitely shouldn't bend that 230 if it's ours that you were bending. That thing's made out of grade 80 steel. It's pretty stout, but if there's a bind in there, something's got to be wrong. I would double check everything at dynamic, kind of like what Eric was doing there. Put the car down, pick up on it, make sure that the J bar is spree, in dynamic mode, and get a look at everything. And if there's anything else you need from me, take some pictures or something and email them, and we'll see if we can help you out there and make that problem go away.
Dan says, would you say side bite is corner entry and mid corner and forward bite is off the corner? Actually, in my personal opinion, side bite is corner entry. The second you're back on the throttle, the car's operating all off of traction. Side bite, in my opinion, has a little to do with it in the middle of the corner, but very little, because we stress the fact that a lot of guys got to run the car. The driver's so used to having that car stuck so hard getting in, then he gets on the throttle and it pushes in the middle, and then he busts the tires loose getting off because it pushed in the middle. Well, so I've told many people that you need to actually run the car freer and rely on the throttle with the traction to pull the car up underneath you. And if you've got traction in the car and the car's set up right, you can go in and let that car freewheel in just a little bit, to the point where, well, once you pick up on the throttle, it should traction up and the car should pull itself back up underneath you. Now, if the car's not set up properly, or if you're having problems to do that, I'm not wanting you to go and free it up a whole bunch and the guy goes in and spins out. But my point was, if the car is not on the point of spinning out, you need to be able to have side bite getting in. A little bit of side bite will affect the car in mid corner, but traction is corner exit and mid corner. Second you're on the power, traction's all up to what the car is going to do. When adjusting the height of the J-bar, does it affect the car differently adjusting it on the rear end versus it on the chassis? Well, it's actually like about a 2-to-1 ratio, to be honest with you. If you adjusted a half an inch on the rear end, you would have to adjust it an inch on the chassis to do the same thing. However, they don't do the same thing, because when you adjust it on the rear end and you drop it on the rear end, you're actually lowering your roll center. If you raise it up on the rear end, on the chassis, to get more angle, you're actually raising the roll center. So they don't actually work together, but to answer your question, it's much more effective. You can tune it with it on the rear end, because like I said, a half an inch will definitely make a major change. That was one of my biggest things back the good old days, when we had those Panhard bar mounts that were 1.25 inches apart. I mean, you drop it one hole on the rear end and you move that thing 1.25 inches to the point where you went actually so much further. Well, now, like with Chad's climber bracket, you can move that thing 1/4 inch to a half an inch and fine tune it to get it in that spectrum where the car is going to have an effect. Because once again, we're changing our corner speed, so we got to change other things, and it's just too much adjustment is worse than not enough adjustment, in my opinion. Bob, right front weight jack cup, is it perfectly centered to travel until I jack up the left rear? When it messed up, should I redo the jack bolt so that it's centered with the left rear up in the air, but then the right height is in the bottom? Well, in reality, you need to, and what we've actually done is we just took a lower control arm, we took an old spring and compressed the spring, and then we've got a ready rod that goes right through the center. So we jack up underneath the seat, basically to the angle that we think the car needs to be in. If the rear end's underneath it, we jack up underneath it until it hits the chain. Then we clamp down on the right front, just as if we were using our load stick, and we clamp down on that thing so that it is fully in dynamic mode, to the point where the A-frame is basically about bottomed out, or is bottomed out on the frame. And then I want the spring everything to be perfectly centered in the spring when it's under full load. I don't care what it's like in static. It could have a bow in it. Well, it shouldn't have a bow in it, but I mean, it could be off a little bit, but dynamic is where the key is. That spring needs to be perfectly square so that you're using the spring to its best ability.
It's going to handle good going down the straightaway.
Yeah,
it don't matter. Yeah,
it's not a problem done straight away. Eric, definitely getting in dynamic. Definitely helped me with the rear bar adjustments and the binds. Thank you for all your help. Well, I appreciate that, Eric. Um, like Chad and I've said numerous times, we have a good time with this show. We enjoy doing it. We look forward to talking to you guys every other week, and we enjoy the questions because I like some of the questions because it makes me think a little bit. Now, like now, and then that's where you notice sometimes I'll come back about 3 questions later and have another answer for you because I was thinking about the one. So it's a lot of fun. We really enjoy it.
For a brief second there, I was trying to figure out where my leaf spring notebook was.
There you go.
I probably have it.
Scott, what's the heaviest spring rate you'd recommend a right rear spring on an IMCA modified? Should we be decreasing the rate on a dry slick racetrack or just decreasing the load? I wouldn't decrease the rate. I would decrease the load. In my opinion, I don't know. We've tried all kinds of numbers. We've tried 300-pound springs. And I think that I'm not saying that some people aren't still doing that. Maybe they are. I've had my best luck with a 250, 2.25 to a 250. It just seems like that's that's been kind of where my go-to has always been, and it seems to work out pretty well for us. Like say if you're running at Deer Creek Speedway where the speeds are a little bit more, you run a little bit stiffer right rear spring, or if you're on a place that's high bank and you're really loading the car, maybe a little stiffer right rear wouldn't hurt anything, but I've never had good luck with anything over a 250. You get over that, your side bite's good, but it hurts your traction up off the corner. Dan, does lowering the J-bar on the pinion help on corner exit? I don't believe that it does. Some people do believe that. And I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm just saying, in my opinion, when you lower it on there, what you're doing is you're creating more angle. And it's that angle that's trying to push up on the left rear. But really, when the car's in dynamic mode, there's already quite a bit of angle in that J-bar. So I don't see where lowering it on the pinion is going to give you any more traction. That's my opinion.
Usually it makes the car tighter in the middle, so then you have more center traction. And if you get the car too tight in the middle, what do? You grab wheel and grab throttle, then you're loose off. So that pannier bar is always a balancing act between rolling free, rolling tight, and keeping it rolling free so you have the grip coming off the corner and you don't have to oversteer.
I completely agree. Let's see. Travis, what do you think the effect on running a 2-inch offset wheel on the left rear on an IMCA stocker? Running 2s in the front, 3s in the rear. Well, when you stick that right, it's the old adage, the rear wheels are your drive wheels and your front wheels are your steering wheels. But if you look down the back, from the back of your car to the front, when the left tires are lined up and the right tire is inboard from the right front, that tells the car that I automatically want you to turn towards the fence. So when you're coming up off the corner, I want the tail of the car to go towards the infield. If you change that and you suck the left rear in and space the right rear out, I'm telling the car that I want the back of the car to go towards the wall when I'm on the throttle. So by putting a 2-inch wheel on that left rear, it actually increases traction up off the corner because it's basically telling the car, I want the tail of the car to go towards the infield in the way it drives and pushes the 2 front wheels. Okay, does the right front drop cup make the car roll harder, assuming no other changes? Yes, it will. Because I'll let you explain the spring table thing.
Yeah, so the anytime that you lower the spring table, so on the right front, when the spring table is lower, I always look at it with a pen or a teeter totter. But if you're the car and you're rolling over and this side's lower, it's going to roll over easier. If this side's higher, it's going to take more energy to roll over the top of that. So anytime you put a shorter spring in the front, in the right front, or you put that bearing down where the screw jack is in the right front, it's going to induce roll onto that right front corner and help the car turn into the corner.
Eric, speaking of Boeing springs, did Chad come up with something to cure the 20-inch spring bow? Thanks again. I don't.
Well, one of the biggest things that you can do to help spring bow is putting the 5-inch Torrington bearing in there, assuming you would have OD cups. But the OD cups and the Torrington bearings is really why we made the OD cups and the Torrington bearing, because that tall spring, and when you wind that thing up and you compress it 7-8 inches statically to get to your dynamic load. I mean, when you twist that spring without the bearings, that thing just keeps twisting itself, and then when it's twisting, it naturally bows. The bearings let the spring spin through its travel, so it makes the spring actually act softer, and it actually makes the spring happier through its life. So, and takes bow away. I mean, obviously, when you take I don't know what you got there. If you got a 100-pound, 20-inch spring, it's gonna bow. I mean, it's an act of nature. You're trying to do something that you shouldn't do with something that wasn't meant to do it. So, but the bearings definitely help the spring bow for sure.
Okay, well, we are out of questions. So if there's anybody that's got any more questions, feel free to ask them. Let's talk about that. Yeah, let's talk about that tip.
I brought a tech tip with. Well, I don't know how many times at the Super Nationals or at Deer Creek we had a couple people too, but you cannot take a double adjuster and put it in a bent bar. I don't care if it's a steering arm, a left rear trailing arm, right rear trailing arm, doesn't matter what it is. The force in this arm goes between these two heims, and this member will break here every single time. You might get one night, you might get 2 nights, you might get 6 nights. This will eventually fail, guaranteed, 100% of the time. And I've seen it how many times at Super Nationals. I know it makes adjusting that length really easy, but you just can't do it.
Ryan wants to know, do you make an OD cup coilover kit?
Yep, all of our coilover kits have converted to OD cup. Yep.
CJ wants to know, Chad, do you make drop shock mounts like the WM243 that changes the orientation of the shock mount?
So to go in one way and go 90 degrees, no, we do not, but that's not a terrible idea. I've never really thought of that. Actually, there was a car. That's funny you bring that up because that probably would have worked in a couple situations at Super Nationals, but we just took we have a 332 mount. I don't see one out here, but we make a 332 that clamps on the bar, and then we put one of our 200-8 swivels in it so we can articulate that either direction, and that worked for that situation. But I see what you mean about having that and then being able to go 90 degrees. So I'll make a note of that. That's not too difficult. I don't know where you want to put that or what you want to do with it, but we definitely could do that.
Terminator stock car with a quick change. What would you recommend for pinion angle and lead on the left rear or not? Well, pinion angle with a stock car versus it needs to be in that neighborhood of somewhere between 5 and 7 degrees. But probably with a quick change, I'd go with 5 just because your pinion is 1.25 inches below center of what a 9-inch would be. So when you put that quick change in the car, you're automatically going to gain drive shaft angle anyway. So what you'd want to do in dynamics, see how far the rear end moves forward when the car rolls over and hikes up on the left rear, and make sure that it doesn't go past zero. But that's what, and lead in the left rear. Um, I don't know if I'd put lead in the left rear. Normally for the stock cars, we actually lengthen the left side wheelbase just like we do with a modified or a sport mod, so that the car, yeah, actually you'd be putting lead in. You'd be lengthening the left side. Yeah, you would want to do that. That helps the car off the corner. Doesn't seem to affect it super bad getting in and through the middle, but it definitely helps the car drive up off the corner a whole lot better. Michael, so what do you recommend for tie rod tubes then?
So on the right front, you would set that to your, what's the center to center on a right front tie rod?
Like 18 and a half, 18 and a quarter.
You'll pick that number so that right front tire is square to the world, and then tow the car with the left front because you got a straight tube on the left front. So generally, that's what everybody's doing. Is that what you do, Bob?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was used to, before we had the drop, the drop ones or the clearance ones, I was adjusted the right tie rod, but now we set that to length. And I'm pretty sure it's 18 and a half inches, but we set it to length and then adjust the left front. Bob is a GRT 2012 GRT ran as a Wasota B mod and a USRA B mod worth updating, or can it be, or is it time to be replaced? Those are good old cars. The thing that you got to look at, the fact is like how many races is on this car. It gets to a point where metal can only flex so much and for so long without it starting to fatigue and wear out. That's probably, you're pushing it. I mean, that technically is 10 years old. So if they ran 25 nights, that's 25 nights a year. That's 250 nights. That's quite a few nights on a car. Once we get past the 200 mark, I tell people that it's time for them to look at updating, or replacing it rather than spending more money. Because by the time you update it, you're spending quite a bit of money, and I don't know if you're going to get the full effect of the updates. CJ wants to make sure that that's a CJ Springer inspired mount.
Yeah, we can do that. I don't know how fast you need one, but we probably got blanks. I could get that done tomorrow. So if you just give me a call, and we will definitely use it as a CJ inspired. It's funny. I was interviewed today on a radio show, the Dirt Show out in Rochester, with Clayne there, and he asked about the ideas and the inspiration. And I remember about 6-7 years ago, we were in a meeting for our new products for that year or whatever, and I'm like, I can't come up with anything. I don't think there's anything new that needs to be done. And that, I think that's probably maybe 80-90 parts ago of new innovative. And that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on, and we're so proud of, is guys like CJ. Hey, I need this mount, or Bob needs this tool, or it's unbelievable just to be a part of it. And here we are on Bob and Chad, and we're coming up with new products. So I hope you all know how much I love being a part of this, because this is what drives me every day. So
Alan, in a B mod with limited power, do you think it takes a lot of horsepower going to a quick change? It takes a little bit more horsepower, but I think it's so minimal for the advantage of making a gear change when you want to change it versus changing them 9-inch gears. That there's a lot of advantages to the quick change that I could see what little horsepower I would rob. I think there's advantages that would make up for the difference. Let's see, Eric, Chad, could you put some part numbers on here for the full bearing setup for that 5x20-inch spring?
I can't actually in our feed here type anything into the comments, but I can definitely send you a message of what you need there. I'll get that taken care of.
Don, evidently that 2012 only has 65 nights. That's pretty awesome for that age of car to only have 65 nights. If it's only got 65 nights on it, it's well worth spending some money on. I mean, there's no, I wouldn't be concerned about it. You know, definitely doing some updates on it, getting some of the new technology, new front end update on it, things like that would definitely be something to consider. So, yeah, just give us a call at the shop, Don, and they can set up some sort of quotes and give you an idea what something like those things would cost. Um, been testing around with a 350-pound right front spring on an E-mod. What's your opinion of going that light? Well, when you go that light, you almost have to kind of go in that mode of coil bind to the point where you're actually going to go into a coil bound situation, uh, and you're going to be operating your spring basically is going to be off of your tire. I'm not saying that it doesn't work, but that's, in my opinion, that's pretty soft. And I'm not a firm believer in that whole coil bind operation. The thing that with the coil bind thing, it goes back, and I know I talk about shocks a lot, but it's such a crucial factor that with that 350-pound spring, you're probably going to want a little bit stiffer compression right front shock so it doesn't go in and slam that spring and unload the car. Because what it'll do is when it slams that spring, it's going to go solid quickly, and it's going to scotch the right front tire is going to lose all its bite whatsoever. It's going to skate out from underneath you. So keep that in mind. With these cars, with the weight of these cars anymore, I think a 450 is probably as soft as I would go on something like that. But once again, I'm not saying it doesn't work. You just you really got to work with that shock and spring combination to make it work. Michael is also interested in that part number.
I'll send you a message too.
James, love your frame checker. Did not realize it also checks drag links too. Might want to mention that.
Okay. I think
Okay.
I said that. Didn't I when we talked about it? Yeah.
I think you did, yes. Can you repeat the shock valving suggestion, AMOD, with the shock on the top of the tube? Well, the thing with the shock, once again, when we go on top of the, somewhere in the neighborhood of an 8.5, just as a generic number. I mean, there's that number really means absolutely nothing anymore because there's so much about the 1 inch number and the 0 point and the 2 inch number and 3 inch number and all that type of stuff. But in relationship to the shock that you're running on the cage, you're going to need to go about 2 valves softer on compression and about 2 valves stiffer on rebound, so that it balances itself out, because now it's no longer working off of that point of the cage itself. INCA AMOD, left rear shock on the bird cage, located top or bottom holes.
The shock on the left rear front, the shock, basically you're mounting that on the cage just so you don't overstroke the shock or top the shock out, basically. So it's you just gotta adjust that. You figure out what you got for shock travel at full droop and with the cage indexed, and You just want to make sure you got enough stroke in the shock to make that whole motion happen without the shock limiting either your hike or it'll de-index the cage, and you don't want that at all.
Brian's got a question, and, and I'm not sure I completely have an answer for her because I don't work with it. I don't work as much with the right rear as I do the left rear. What's your thoughts about preloading the right rear coilover on an IMCA modified, either at ride height or at hanging on the chain? I don't have a spring smasher, unfortunately.
Well, it all depends on the chain. I mean, you aren't going to be able to preload at ride height just because of the situation. You don't want to have that right rear chain down that tight to be able to preload the right rear like that. So, but you're always going to want at the end of the chain, you're going to want a little bit of spring tension there, I feel. So it's a balancing act between your ride height number, and then when you're climbing the bars going down the straightaway, we don't want that thing to come off the spring because we want it to have, still have some load in it. So as far as a magical number, I'm not sure what a magical number would be, but like I said, you don't want to tighten that chain up to where you're preloading the right rear against the chain, because that's, once you hit a bump or anything in a rough track, it's going to be wicked and you're going to wreck the car, or the guy on the outside of you. It's not going to be good.
Let's see here. The next question was Andrew. I'm saying modified. What are your starting points for ride heights? Well, Andrew, that's a question I can't actually answer you because number one, it depends on what size tire, if you're on the 20-inch tire versus the 19-inch tire. As a rule of thumb, we usually, our cars, we locate from the center of the lower control arm bolt to a level surface. Our right front is usually 7 to 7.25. Our left front is usually 7.25 to 7.5. I always run my left front 1/4 of an inch higher than I do my right front. Rear just depends on where you actually measure it at, because say like with the GRT, we measure it to the frame rail. Our right rear frame rail is 12 3/4 to the top of the axle housing. I don't have one for the left rear because we just, whatever the load number is in the spring is what we got, and that's what we go with. So I can't really give you an actual ride height number for your right rear. I know I usually start my right rear upper trailing arm at 18 degrees. So, and the lower trailing arm is usually close to level. Ryan, first time running a biscuit bar versus a solid pull bar. Is a fifth shock a must-have? I personally believe that it would be. Now, what you'll find without the fifth shock, the car will be freer getting into the corner because it unloads quicker. Because whatever biscuit bar you have, say it gets 3/8 of an inch of movement or 1/2 an inch of compression. Well, once that compression goes away, that car kind of has a tendency to unload a little bit as that biscuit comes back to zero. So having an axle dampener shock there is going to eliminate part of that problem. Now you'll find with that biscuit bar, we don't run near as stiff a compression. Like as an example, that fifth shock, we'll actually run like a 6 compression with like a 2 rebound. Depends on the pull bar. Some pull bars we only actually even run a 4, just enough to the point where it has a little resistance so that it doesn't try to shock the tires. Because nowadays, with a real slick racetrack with these tires that we have, it's so easy to shock the tires, and once again, that would be we don't want to do that on a real slick racetrack. So what do you got coming up the rest of the week there, Chad?
Heading asphalt Oktoberfest, the big local deal here. So excited to see all my asphalt buddies and hang out for the week.
That'll be fun. I think I'm planning on going fishing if the weather looks good this weekend. I kind of got behind on that fishing thing this summer. Now, of course, about one more night, like I was telling you before the show, where we drove 2 hours, fished for 5 hours, and didn't get a bite, and drove 2 hours home. About one more of them, and I think the boat will go into storage. It'll be the end of that fishing thing for Bob.
You missed the show that night.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Holy moly. But anyway, so we're up on the hour. I want to thank you guys again for all the great questions. We had some really good questions tonight, and hopefully we had some really good answers for you. And we will plan on seeing you here. Let's see. Today is October 3rd. We will see you then. We'll plan on October 17th, and then we will probably skip and go a month from that and do the 21st of November is probably what the plan is going to be. We'll skip that first part of November. All you guys will be hunting and chasing turkeys and stuff like that, and deer and whatever else is out there that you're. It's too early for pheasant season. I suppose maybe in November it would be pheasant season. Yeah, see, Jim even said full moon this weekend. Get those walleyes, Bob. Yeah, I said those apps were telling me it's supposed to be a good weekend, so I'm hoping so. Thanks, Eric. We appreciate it, and once again, we appreciate all you guys. We look forward to this deal. I was pretty bummed last weekend when we couldn't get the sound to work on my computer. Typical glitch that Windows computers can kind of have from time to time, but we got that fixed and we were here tonight. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great night, Chad.
Yep. Thank you.